Hi, my name is Lucy. I'm 17, and I love my friend more than my ears. What are you willing to exchange with your friend? Your favorite blouse, answers to tests, your boyfriend, or body parts? Well, then watch this video to the end and find out how I exchanged ears with my best friend. It all started with preparing for Halloween. Abby and I chose our costumes responsibly because it was our first college party, and I was determined to get everyone's attention, especially William's. William is a great guy, but his attention is like a bird's. Poof! And he's already running after some sparkle. And I, as his girlfriend, want all the attention for myself. He's going to university in another state next year, and I want to leave a bright impression of myself so that he doesn't want to think about others. With Abby, that very friend, I went through fire and water. We are like blood sisters who share everything with each other. We used to read the same fairy tales when we were kids. We used to sit at the same desk at school and love the same chewing gum. And now we like the same TV shows and celebrities. I remember one time when we went to college. We wore the same green dresses and black shoes. And we looked like real twin sisters, especially from the back. This was the story we remembered when we came to choose costumes. We both liked the costumes of a witch, so at once, creepy and attractive, we tried it on in turn to decide who would fit it more. It turned out that we both looked super hot. And then we thought, why not take two identical costumes and rock the whole party, being in different places at the same time? Ha! We bought these costumes and bumped into William at the checkout. You know how it is. Nothing bad seems to happen, but you still have a terrible premonition. Willie immediately started making fun of us. No, he complimented our taste, of course, but the words, "I don't want to confuse you," made me uneasy. And when Willie said with a smile that he was afraid to tell Abby a few love secrets in private because we looked like twins in those costumes, I even had to poke him with my elbow. And mind you, Abby blushed and giggled at all this. What a friend! Will's parents took off for Halloween, so we decided to throw a party at his place. Abby and I were the stars of the party. Makeup, costumes, hairstyles, everything was the same. We even scared a couple of people approaching from different sides at the same time. Then, we heard a friend confidently say that Abby was the one with ghost earrings, so now they wouldn't confuse. Heck, the only thing we didn't consider, the earrings we had were different. Abby quickly resolved the issue and offered to exchange the earrings in a friendly way to confuse everyone completely. Brilliant idea. Or not. I regretted my resemblance to Abby when we met Willie. The jokes kept coming out. You're like twins. I don't want to confuse you. Cloning a girlfriend is any guy's dream and all that. Ugh. I tried to ignore his behavior, but my stomach was churning. The mood was ruined. Instead of admiring what a cool girl he had, Willie was dreaming about twin girls, which made Abby laugh. And I was sulking at the punch table, so I wouldn't have to look at them again. I didn't get a break from the crowd, because a pumpkin jumped up to me and called Abby to hang out. I explained bluntly that she had made a mistake, and Pumpkin giggled. Oh, someone should warn Willie that he was making out with the wrong witch. My heart sank. My friend with my boyfriend? What? Pumpkin's friend quickly assured me that Pumpkin was just imagining things, and that Abby and Willie were just having a nice conversation. But now, even that thought haunted me. My eyes found Abby on the makeshift dance floor, dancing in her witch costume. And Willie wasn't there. That's good. I will find him now and calm down, I decided. As is usually the case with guys, it's easier said than done. The search turned into a leapfrog. As soon as I went somewhere, it turned out that Willie had been there a minute ago and had already left. In the end, I went all over the house, went back to the living room, and almost gave up on everything and went dancing to Abby. It was then that something happened that shocked me the most during the evening. Will appeared in the living room and I started waving at him, but he didn't see me. Far from it, he came up behind Abby and put his arms around her, putting his hands on her waist and my best friend didn't even think to push him away, even though she knew for sure that this was my boyfriend. I ran across the room intending to slap them. I was shaking and feverish with anger. Will jumped away from Abby, as if scalded, and began to justify himself. I could accept his excuse that he'd confused us, but I couldn't accept Abby's behavior. Yes, the suits were the same. Yes, Willie thought it was me, let's say, but there could be no excuse for Abby's behavior. She knew who was hugging her. She was flirting with my boyfriend and hitting on him. Did you do things in anger that you later regretted? My anger was mixed with alcohol, and I decided I had to do something unpleasant to Abby. For example, take away my earring. I had one hand in her hair, and the other grabbed her left ear. Abby started to pull away and grabbed my ear too. I literally hated everyone and everything around us as we fell to the floor and rolled around on it, grabbing each other tighter and tighter. A cheering crowd immediately formed around us, shouting support for the fight. When Abby hit my head on the floor, I blacked out, and I didn't wake up until I was in a hospital room with my ear bandaged. The doctor explained that while we were rolling on the floor, we crushed a couple of glasses, cut ourselves with glass, and tore off each other's earlobes in the process. Abby was lying on the next bed, her face white with terror. My stomach ached because of fear. We felt our ears in tight bandages in panic. Ran to the mirror, but the doctor calmed us down. Like the ambulance arrived pretty quickly, and the surgeon sewed everything back on. It was impossible to see what was there and how it was under the bandages. And after providing us with lists of recommendations, the doctor discharged me and my friend home as soon as we finally came to our senses. After a week, my poor ear began to ache as if someone was trying to tear it off again, and I was climbing up the wall from this pain. All this week, Will sent me cute pictures of cats and wished me a speedy recovery, but he did not come, saying that he was very busy preparing for university. Imagine my face when I found out that he was throwing a second party, Halloween 2.0, to make up for what Abby and I had ruined. I went to the party to have a determined conversation with Willie, and came face to face with Abby, who was clearly there for the same purpose, fighting with my boyfriend. We almost got into another fight on the road, but when I accidentally brushed my hand over Abby's ear, blood spurted from under the bandage. For the sake of experiment, I touched my ear through the pain and involuntarily screamed. My fingers were also stained with blood, and it smelled very bad in every sense. We immediately forgot about wanting to fight and ran back to the hospital. The doctor could not understand our confused story about guys, parties, and ears, but we looked terrible and we were taken to the reception without a queue. A fatal error was discovered in the work of the surgeon. He was guided by our earrings, and they, if you remember, were switched. I lost my lobe with a bat, and Abby lost her stupid ghost. During the operation, the doctor who was guided by these damn earrings accidentally sewed my ear to her, and the strong rejection of foreign tissue and blood began. There's another difference between us. Different blood types. The doctor offered to quickly operate on us right now, but Willie's party just wouldn't let me rest. I whispered the situation to Abby, and she's my best friend for a reason. She got the message. So we pretended that we both really needed to go out to the bathroom and slipped away. What can I say? The surprise was amazing. We arrived at the party a fair bit late and saw an amazing picture. William is dancing with an arm around a girl, pausing occasionally to give her a good kiss. By the way, do you know who it was? The Chatty Pumpkin. I admit I wanted to kill her and make a pumpkin pie out of her right there. But Abby took my hand and I calmed down. If a week without me was enough for him to turn his attention to fruit and vegetables, so it's for the best. I didn't pull at her hair. I just tightened my grip on Abby's hand And we walked out of there together, silently, because there was no need for words. And you subscribe to the channel, so as not to miss new interesting stories.
Hi, my name is Debbie. I'm 18 and I almost became my boss's sweetheart. Have you ever been paid attention to by a man who, well, shouldn't have done that? Your teacher or your boss? I was in that situation. But it was more complicated than you think. Watch this video to the end and you'll find out how I had to fight my boss's powerful wife for my promotion. I aimed at my future career since kindergarten and stubbornly walked towards the goal without looking around. In my graduating class, I won a competition from one well-known magazine in our state. No one was particularly surprised, including me. What was the reward, you might ask? Internship at this very magazine. Certainly not paid, but for an 18-year-old girl, it was already awesome news. Such a great start, I thought, and agreed. The boss, Mr. Stempson, or Fred as he immediately told me to address him, and it was already embarrassing if you understand me, turned out to be just a cool boss. I had been working in the magazine for about a month when near the coffee maker, I heard a secret from a colleague, Scott, that the boss needed a new editor and younger to work with the youngest target audience of our magazine. Some new and cool project was planned, and I started trying to hang around Fred, showing him what a valuable and diligent worker I was. You won't believe it. It worked out. What would you do in my shoes? Would you sit like a mouse and hope you'd be noticed? Fred allowed me to work on the project, and even cooler, promised me a new position instead of the boring rank of an intern. He began to talk to me more often, lingered at my desk, and I melted with joy because he was awesome both as the boss and the interlocutor. His good attitude towards me transferred into a personal invitation to the annual corporate, closed in an expensive restaurant. Yesterday's schoolgirl in my face just squealed with delight. Fred came to the party with his wife. I had never seen her before, and I would prefer not to see her again because at first glance, the tension between us thickened. I was a naive fool who thought only about her internship, and just in case, I decided to try to make Amy like me. That was the name of Fred's wife. But whatever I did, she only looked angrier and angrier. The next morning, Scotty and I went to the cafe and discussed the party and all the details. I told him about the incident with the boss's wife, and a colleague rushed to explain that the boss's wife was wildly jealous. Well, thank you. Very in time. I was now the main suspect in the case of seducing someone else's husband. I didn't have time to worry because on the same day my first big meeting was waiting for me. It was my ticket to the world of big journalism, although I didn't know about it yet. We were sitting around a huge desk in the boss's office and just chatting, offering a lot of fresh offers, and Fred couldn't help but brag about me. His secretary didn't have time to take notes. Near the end of the meeting, the boss shook my hand and in front of everyone told me that he would trust me to write my own weekly column. Beauty tips for teenagers and other stuff, but even this seemed like a huge breakthrough to me. The only thing that ruined my life was Amy. She worked for the same magazine, but it was the first meeting we both attended. She reminded me of a toad pouted with anger. And when Fred praised me and appointed me in charge of the column, I was even afraid that his spouse would now burst. As I walked to the workplace, Amy intercepted me near the smoking pod. She unceremoniously grabbed me by the elbow and forcefully dragged me into a smoke-filled but empty room. After the meeting, all smokers spent at least 10 minutes here. The boss's wife sat me on a chair and started asking me questions about my personal life. It was very unpleasant. I answered through my teeth and tried not to grudge, especially when Amy moved on to a topic that really interested her, my relationship with her husband. She tactfully hinted to me that there was no place for such an upstart and that I could lose my job. I ran out of the smoking pot as soon as I could. And I was scared, I confess. I was hoping this topic wouldn't come up again, but in vain. It just got worse. Fred arranged a team-building exercise for his staff in nature, a real team rafting on the river in boats. I had no experience, and the boss carefully insisted that I got into the same boat with him. He said he had a lot of experience and he would be able to keep me safe. If I knew we were going to swim with Amy, I'd be sick, honest word. This rafting turned into torture as soon as I felt on myself her eerie, icy look. Imagine being in the same boat with your worst enemy. How do you feel? It was not fun. Drowning then seemed like a worthy alternative. Fred and I boarded paired paddles on the sides, and Amy became the helmsman on the stern. We passed the rapids quite cheerfully, but on one of them, the boat shook so much that the water whipped inside and its flow pressed me against the board. And then the wave pulled me down and I dramatically changed my mind to drown, but I couldn't do anything. Fortunately, Fred's sturdy palm clung into my waist and the boss snarled me back into the leveled boat. The problems didn't end there. Amy turned white with anger, squeezed her paddle, the boat shook again, and with a loud splash, my boss's wife spit into the water. She was immediately pulled out, the boat was directed to shore, and Amy crouched on rocks to dry, but she was so angry that the air around her shook. She slapped poor Scott for not bringing her towels fast enough. The end of team building turned into a real test. We got to the end point of the rafting some way, but everything tumbled out of my hands under Amy's contemptuous gaze. Do you know how I hate gossip? Oh, and at work, it's inevitable. Very soon, we heard a rumor that the boss, for some personal service, was ready to make me, an inexperienced intern, an editor of a new project. When Scotty told me about it, adding that Amy was already aware and in a rage, I just freaked out. I felt the need to quit and spit on everything, but let Fred down who believed in me? I couldn't do that. Fred called me out to himself to talk about a new project, a new position, and all that. I tried to refuse. I was making a fool out of myself. I was afraid to even imagine Amy's reaction to my promotion, but the boss didn't give me a chance to speak out. He got excited, convincing me, saying something about young blood and fresh thoughts. He looked very flushed and his tie pulled up somewhere on his side, and when Fred started to correct it, he got hopelessly confused in a loop, and I had to rush to help him. When Amy entered the office without knocking, she wouldn't figure out why I stood so close to her husband and why I was holding his tie. She just started to yell. We tried to make excuses, showed the tie, but Amy's anger didn't know any measure and our words only infuriated her. After 24 hours, everybody was poking a finger in my back, giggling and gossiping. It was beginning to look like bullying, and I decided to quit. Now, finally, I was late with the resignation letter. The next meeting began, and the boss promised to listen to me later. The prospect of being in front of all those gossipers was not great, but I had no choice. I thought I was gonna be the target for general hatred, but Fred praised me and the whole team so sincerely that I was even touched. But not everyone liked it, and someone started freely in front of Fred, mumbling that I got this promotion in a famous way. And when Fred was indignant and protected me, Amy came in, and she had a look. Everything's clear with you. Red with anger, she came up to me and spit out in my face that I was a brazen schoolgirl who was ready to ruin someone else's marriage for the sake of her career. Well, I responded by calling her a jealous tantrum and walked out of the office, slamming the door. Everything in me literally pulsed and burned from the anger. I felt like a living torch. I didn't even want to cry, so I freaked out. Scott found me, said Fred put his wife in place and that the position of editor was mine and leaving the magazine was unnecessary. But honestly, I never had any desire to stay here. I took a letter of recommendation from Fred and attached it to my college papers. I walked out the magazine's office with my head held high. I decided to dive into my studies with a head. And in 2 years, I plan to take a part-time job in another edition. It's not so solid, but it's not so scandalous. Did someone else's patronage backfire? Tell me about it in the comments. If you want to hear more new stories, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon. Everyone for now, until new meetings.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm 18 years old. Have you ever experienced a situation when your partner suddenly turned out to be non-traditional? What did you feel at that moment? Watch the video to the end and you will find out how my boyfriend became gay. It all started when I moved to New York with my boyfriend. Everything went well. We rented an apartment and I got a job as a hotel manager. But after living together for a while, Tim and I realized that we were not very suitable for each other, and we decided to break up. I was not upset, and was sure that in such a big city I would have no problems finding a guy. And that's what happened. We had several interns at work, and for some reason, I was assigned to teach them everything. I met Drew among them. He burst into the room half an hour late and apologized for a long time. Even then, I thought he was cute. I told the interns everything they needed and gave them instructions. I asked Drew to stay with me and watch me work. While there were no clients, I talked to him. He asked a lot of questions and was very pleasant to talk to. Then he asked me out on a date. I immediately agreed, and a few hours later, after work, we went to a cafe. That's how we started a relationship. We talked a lot at work and spent time after. At one point, I noticed that Drew was very tired. I asked what was wrong with him, and it turned out that he lived in the country and he had to get up very early to get to work. Even though we hadn't been together that long, I had strong feelings for him, so I offered to move in with me. Have you ever met a person and immediately felt a strong connection with them? Drew agreed with pleasure. The move didn't take long, and soon Drew and I spent our first night together. After the intimacy, I wanted to talk to Drew, but he was somehow subdued and taciturn. I thought he was just tired and I didn't pay much attention to it. As the weekend approached, we decided to throw a party. We called our friends to introduce them to each other. Everyone brought drinks and snacks, and within an hour the fun was in full swing. I was happy to see that my friends and his were finding a common ground. As time went on, it was past midnight, and I decided that it was necessary for everyone to go home. I went to the next room to find Drew and suggest that we finish the party. But what I saw shocked me. As soon as I opened the door to the room, this interesting picture appeared in front of me. Drew and his friend Michael were kissing, so that they didn't even notice that someone had entered. What's going on here? I demanded an explanation from Drew, Michael, and all the other people in the room who were watching them with amusement. Drew and Michael jumped up and started to explain that nothing serious had happened. They were just playing spin the bottle. All the guys began to calm me down. My friend also joined in the explanation, saying that we should not take it seriously. Everyone was drunk and just having fun. I noticed the bottle on the floor and that everyone in the room was sitting in a circle around it. So I decided not to think about it, but I asked Drew not to do it again, because it was awkward and unpleasant to watch him kiss someone else. For about a week after the party and the kiss situation, everything went as usual. I went to work, was minding my own business, and of course spent time with Drew. We got closer and told each other more. But one day, I was coming home from work. Drew left earlier that day on the pretext that he would go to his family in the country today, stay there late, and return to our house. When I decided to walk home through the park, I saw something that alerted me. Drew and Michael were walking there together. They were having a lot of fun and they didn't notice me, so I decided to go home as soon as possible. I was alarmed, my mind spinning, the memory of Drew and Michael kissing, now their walk. These were not serious things, but for some reason, they bothered me a lot. I wanted to talk to Drew when he would come back, but by the time I was home, waiting for him to return, I had calmed myself down. Drew probably just got back to town earlier and decided to run into Mike. I really wanted to trust Drew because he didn't look like someone who could hide anything. Yes, I just let the situation go again. I went to work the next day and Drew had the day off. I thought it would be great to leave early today, buy Chinese food near my house, and please my loved one with my early arrival and a surprise date with delicious dishes. So I did so, being in a wonderful mood. Have you ever felt that as soon as you're ready to have a good evening and are looking forward to it, something unpleasant happens? What I found when I got home destroyed all that easy mood and all my ideas about the perfect evening. I saw Drew and Michael. Drew looked restless and Michael sat next to him, holding his hand and calming him. They didn't see me right away, which was probably why I witnessed this cute scene of two lovers. Can you imagine what I felt then? My boyfriend was holding hands with another guy, clearly not in a friendly way, right at my house. Then we had a difficult conversation, and it is still difficult for me to remember it. And myself at that moment, you will understand why. Essentially, after the party, Drew and Michael realized that they were in love. They had been friends before, but the kiss, even if it wasn't real, was a turning point that changed their relationship to each other. They wanted to be together. But that wasn't all. Drew took me, who was sitting in complete shock, by the hand and told me that he still loved me very much and wanted us to be together, but that he was also in love with Michael. He suggested that I try to stay in a polyamorous relationship with him. It meant only one thing to me at the time. That scoundrel Drew wanted to sit on 2 chairs, have a girl with an apartment, and have Michael to spend a good time with. I was furious. I threw Michael out first, trying not to throw my fists at him, and then I told Drew very seriously that it was over between us. I insulted him as much as I could, and also told him to get out of my apartment tomorrow. Drew looked very depressed and cautiously asked me not to tell anyone about what had happened, about him and Michael. I didn't make any promises to him, so I called a taxi and went to my friend's house. I needed distraction. We were sitting in one of their houses, all talking, and I couldn't get the situation out of my head. My friends noticed this and asked what was wrong with me. I couldn't resist telling them everything. I realized now that I did it to spite Drew. I stayed the night at my friend's house and couldn't sleep until the morning, from worry. And in the end, after only a couple of hours of sleep, I went to work. That made me even more angry with Drew. Now I am ashamed of this, but at work I told almost everyone about what had happened. I felt like Drew was using me, and I wanted to get back at him. However, the situation went further than I expected. When word spread throughout the hotel, Drew became the object of ridicule, insults, and even threats. Drew is very vulnerable, and it was very difficult for him to bear it. He came up to me and asked me to fix it, to tell everyone that I made it up out of resentment. However, I was so annoyed that I refused him. Moreover, I told our colleagues about his request. One day, Drew didn't show up for work. I was worried, but did not attach any importance to this. However, the next day he did not come either. My colleague said that she heard that he was in the hospital. He was attacked by some guys in the alley, and they said it was the hotel employees. When I heard this, I almost burst into tears. I realized that my revenge went too far, and because of me, a person ended up in the hospital. After Drew got better, he quit the hotel. I realized how terrible I was, that I had to accept people as they are. I apologized to him, and he accepted my apology. But our relationship probably won't be the same. I never found out which of the hotel's guys attacked Drew, but I think it gets back to them anyway. If you like the story, then like it and subscribe to the channel. All the best to you. Do not repeat my mistakes. Be tolerant and respectful to people.
Hello, I'm Mary. I'm 16. Have you ever suffered a serious damage to your reputation? Well, please check out this video to see how you might face a difficulty like this one and cope with it. So I have a sister, Danny, one of the prettiest girls at school. I used to be so jealous of her because she got so much attention and so few boy troubles, so many boyfriends. But beauty aside and boys, Danny has the kindest of hearts. And as years have passed, my envy turned to love and admiration. She's like my role model and we spent a lot of time together. She wasn't really interested in boys' attention, so it was a pleasure to watch them fall all over themselves to win her approval. But everything changed when my classmate Max, who I had a crush on, began to notice me and then asked me out and said he'd like me for a long time. Well, we spent a lot of time together, but Max would always prefer spending time at my house to hanging out somewhere else. I thought Danny didn't like this because we spent less time together, her and I, but she didn't say anything. When it was just the two of us, we still chatted and laughed like before. I liked that. Once Danny mentioned Max in a conversation, she said that she thought he was cheating on me. I said that I didn't believe that, and then the discussion just ended like that. I wasn't quite truthful. I did think that Max didn't really like me, and his attitude was somewhat cold and weird. So I looked into his phone when he went into the restroom at a cafe. The first thing I saw was a steamy conversation with some girl named Eliza. She sent him pictures and he texted how he wanted to be her boyfriend. They joked and talked about a lot of personal stuff. She wanted to steal my boyfriend and even wore the same dress. I ran home without explaining anything to Max. I think he understood that I might have checked his phone. I told Danny at home. She convinced me he didn't deserve me and I should break up with him. But I hesitated. I waited because I hoped that was some kind of mistake. I tried to justify his actions to myself by the fact that he didn't confess any feelings for her. Danny and I were going to spend an evening watching our favorite movie under the blankets like we always do when one of us is sad. I was picking a movie and making popcorn, but suddenly Danny canceled everything, saying she had some urgent business that she forgot to do. What kind of urgent business could be more urgent than a sister in need? I decided to follow Danny and find out. I don't even know how to describe what I saw when I followed her. My dear sister, wearing my dress, standing next to my boyfriend. I didn't want to believe it. My sister had betrayed me for my boyfriend. She betrayed me in such a cruel way. First, I wanted to know what and why, and I waited for Danny at home to confront her, but then I realized I didn't ever want to talk to her again for the rest of my life. The next few days were unbearable. Max didn't even call. He acted like we'd never even dated. I tried texting him a few times, but something stopped me. Danny and I didn't talk, and she looked depressed. Tried not to notice me. I think they were both ashamed. But it became even worse. Max came to visit. Not me, and not to apologize. He came to pick up Danny because they were going to the movies. I was so shocked. I forgot how to speak. I just stood there, tears rolling down my face. I hope you realize we're not together anymore, he said, and it sounded so rude. It hurt me more than his texts to Eliza. It was over. It seemed like a nightmare with no end. I was in this terrible state for a couple of weeks. The more I thought about this, the more disgusting Max seemed. But I also thought about Danny. What made her do this? We were the closest of sisters. Once, going by her room, I heard her crying. I silently went inside and saw her in tears on the floor. I thought that perhaps Max had dumped her and it was payback time, but when I asked her what happened, I heard something that would make even daytime talk shows crawl in envy. Danny told me she wanted to break up with Max. She wanted to spend more time with me and also thought he was an unworthy jerk, so she decided to give him a test. using a social network. And she wasn't wrong. He gladly cheated on me. She thought it was all over, but that very night, we were supposed to watch a movie. He texted her fake account and said, "I know it's you, Danny. Don't play me for a fool. We need to talk. It's about your sister and has to stay between us, for her own safety." Danny realized something serious had happened and thought she needed to find out. Max said he had my nudes, and if Danny didn't agree to date him publicly, he'd send it to everyone with my name on them. They were supposed to date for 6 weeks, and then Max would dramatically dump her, and she had to play at being desperate to make Max a real stud in the eyes of other boys. At first, it was supposed to be just a sham of a relationship for the sake of publicity, but that day I found Danny crying. Max was trying to force her. She managed to break his hold, although she had a scraped knee and a bruised cheek. This fake relationship became unbearable and unsafe for her. I asked Danny why she hadn't told me, and she said she didn't want to upset me with this dirty story, and she'd rather I was disappointed in her than embarrassed for myself. I tried to comfort her and said I'd never sent Max any nudes and never taken any. Danny cried harder, realizing she'd been scammed. Now it was my turn to stand up for my sister. I told everything to the school principal. He had a talk with Max's parents. Max was suspended from school, and we were advised to press charges. We did, and Max is now looking at being charged with blackmailing and sexual harassment. We also got a restraining order on him till the court makes a decision. I think Danny and I are both safe from him. This is some serious lesson for a jerk like him, who underestimated sisters' love for each other, I think. I hope you come across no such Maxes in your life, but more people like my sister Danny. If you want more people to see this video, please like it. And if you want to know when we post another story, please subscribe and hit the bell button.
Hi everyone, my name is Penny. I'm 17 years old and I've got into a mess that is still scary to remember. Were you taught to share as a child? And did you have to share with people? I've tried to do this. Watch this video to the end and find out what happened because of my attempt to have a threesome. Rem, my boyfriend, never seemed perfect to me. Even at 14, when we first started dating, I didn't look at him through rose-colored glasses. But I honestly considered him the closest person to me, and he returned the trust to trust. And even in spite of this harsh and far from vanilla reciprocity, I was sensible about his shortcomings, and this often led to quarrels. For example, Rem is very independent and hates tears. Because of this, he often can't be near me during my troubles. And he never picks up the phone. You would know how hard it is to constantly search for the strength for infinite patience if your boyfriend is constantly moping and reacts sharply to any comments. He just starts yelling back. That's it. Recently, Rem said that a friend of his was coming to see him, and he was talking my ears off about it. All the way from Illinois, which is a long trip from our town. I was happy. My unsociable boyfriend still had friends. He suggested that we spend time together and have a good time together. Or rather, I suggested, because Rem might not want to be as open to the new as I was. I was looking forward to a great weekend and was glad of the initiative. According to Rem's stories, Garrett, that was the name of his mysterious friend, was cute and generally cool. Who could have known how it would turn out? Has there ever been a feeling in your life that everything was not going according to plan from the very beginning, and everything was so annoying that you just wanted to cry from your own powerlessness? As soon as I saw Garrett, I knew it was over. Love at first sight? Bullshit. Reciprocity at first sight? Don't you want to? I knew immediately that this would be a disaster. I could see the warmth in Garrett's eyes and I could feel myself drawn to him. No, it definitely shouldn't be like this. Well, not at first sight. On the first day, we planned a bike ride along the forest road around the town. The sun was shining, I was hot, the wind ruffled my hair, and everything was just fine. I was still in love.
We agreed to race 10 kilometers without stopping, putting ice cream at stake. And apparently, Rem really wanted ice cream because he sped off like a jet engine. Garrett and I, we were in no hurry, just rolling around and chatting, had time to get to know each other better. He was very funny, easily made me laugh with a couple of phrases. After 10 minutes of cycling, I forgot about the awkward high frame and was just laughing at his jokes, but suddenly a damn nail got under my wheel. Poof! And I was flying over the steering wheel head first. Bang! And I was lying on the ground, rubbing my burning knees. Damn. And Garrett hopelessly looked at my bike's flat tire. I was hurt to the point of tears, but Garrett, not accepting any objections, shoved the steering wheel of his bike into my hands and silently walked forward, dragging mine. It was awkward riding his bike, but I tried to keep up with him so I could keep talking. It was necessary to diffuse the situation somehow. I was very pleased that an almost unknown dude was helping me out as much as possible. I must have been smiling like a fool. By the time we got there, Rem was already eating his ice cream. He decided to surprise us with the news that his folks had allowed the three of us to come over to their cottage in the country and hang out. By noon, we were driving along the dusty highway in Rem's rattling pickup truck to his parents' cottage. Garrett talked incessantly about his high school in Illinois. Rem smoked grimly out the window, and I bit my nails, fidgeted in the seat, and tried not to look at Garrett's insanely beautiful profile at my side. I didn't know what to do with myself, and in the late afternoon, I foolishly complained to Rem that I was bored. He immediately offered a solution. He would take care of the dinner, and Garrett and I could take a boat out on the lake to watch the sunset and let the mosquitoes eat us. In the boat, Garrett was so eloquent that I was almost afraid. He talked about himself, his past, his hobbies. I kept this conversation going as best as I could, trying not to think about the fact that we'd only met for the first day. We took up the oars and returned to the reedy shore. We sat there in silence. We were just silent. Then I kissed him as a joke, though I really wanted to. And he seemed to understand that. And then someone laughed at us. A local fisherman in an idiotic Panama hat was smoking a cigarette and watching us from the bank. We flushed, and then we were all in different directions, almost falling over the side of the boat. How would you feel if you were caught off guard? I was burning with shame on the way home. Garrett was no better, and we decided not to try to repeat our shame. We looked worse than ever at dinner, and Rem decided that we had not been able to get along during the walk. Yes, he could see no further than his nose. We were still shaking from what had happened, from the fear of exposure, from shame, when my boyfriend laid out the brilliant idea of watching a movie together as an act of reconciliation before going to bed. Somehow, we chose the movie. I wanted to cheer up, Garrett wanted to laugh, and Rem wanted to be scared. But he passed out around the 20th minute and started snoring hideously, creating a wonderful soundtrack for Dawn of the Dead. Garrett leaned over and put an arm around my shoulder. I felt myself start to shake again and pull painfully towards him, so it was no surprise that we started to kiss. When we broke away from each other to take a breath, Rem looked at us with such horror and contempt that I felt sorry for him. We stared into space for a long minute, and then my boyfriend opened his mouth and started yelling hoarsely. He mentioned his naivety or promiscuity, the problems of the modern generation, and spaded trust. In short, he came off in full. Garrett grabbed his elbow and pulled him off the couch. He literally dragged Rem out of the room, and I stared at the screen where the zombies were eating someone alive. I felt no better than a poor victim of the living dead. My fingers were trembling with fear, and my stomach was tight. The guys had been gone so long that I had already come up with a whole speech to explain and apologize to them.
Fortunately, it didn't come in handy. They came back happy and calm and said something that made me want to immediately drown them both in the notorious lake. They offered me a threesome. I was horrified. 2 guys at once? Twice as much responsibility, nerves, intimacy, problems, faults. The prospect was not the best, and I couldn't refuse them. They were so happy with the solution that I had to ask for the right to think. I didn't want to offend any of them, so I literally begged for time to think things through. I spent the whole night on pins and needles with Rem snoring on one side and his friends even breathing on the other side. The solution appeared, far from perfect, but at least some that cost me a whole night of sound sleep. Tell me, would you date more than one guy? It doesn't matter if it's secret or explicit. To be honest, I never had enough imagination for this. Hell, I had a lot of one Rem. Why did I need 2 at once? What was good about this? What were the advantages? I thought that a 3-way relationship would help me finally choose a candidate for the future. After all, I had nothing to lose. Or so I thought. We decided to meet the beginning of our relationship tomorrow. Early in the morning, the 3 of us went to the lake. Garrett was fine as a lark. I couldn't sleep at night, and Rem was always yawning and complaining. The lake was beautiful in the light of the awakening sun, and I admired the glistening, smooth water. Garrett offered to go for a swim, and I couldn't say no. And where I was, there was Remus. That's the way it happened. We swam for an eternity until it got hot and we were terribly hungry. I had to get out of the cool water and hang my bathing trunks on the porch. Surprisingly, we were very good together. We chatted, laughed, and egged each other on. Problems arose immediately. We tried hard to pretend that everything was all right, everything was normal. But we were only deceiving ourselves. We were never considered a romantic couple. A romantic trio? In general, going on a date was a problem. How much did we have to spend on a movie ticket? Of course, we could pretend that we were such a big friendly company, but this was a date. Wasn't this about the point that we didn't have to act like friends? Besides, I was more and more concerned about Rem. He was, well, how can I put it? He was obsessed with jealousy. He didn't like it when one of us showed affection to someone other than him. To be honest, I understood him a little, but I shouldn't have started this threesome thing at all. Have you had a similar experience? Would you be able to remain calm in such situations? How was our intimacy? Well, are you sure you want to find out? I, a naive fool, thought this would reduce the tension, not bring it to the absolute. It was an idea from the series, let's watch a movie together, what can go wrong, right? Everything went wrong right away. Garrett was freaking out more and more. Rem was calmer, but he was clearly nervous as he watched his friend being shaken by the ambiguity of the situation. He tried to calm Garrett down, but Garrett only got more agitated, reacting to his friend like a bull to a red rag. The awkwardness could be cut with a knife, and I was hoping that we would have a special emotional connection. I had seen enough stupid comedies. When Garrett decided to start our adventure and reached out to kiss me, Rem turned purple and punched his friend in the nose. Garrett fell on his back, and I had to hang on to Rem to keep him from rushing into the fight to finish off my best friend with his feet. I screamed, pleaded, and mumbled reassuringly, spreading my arms to push the guys away from each other. I was terrified they were going to throw me out of the way and start on each other, but the heat was gone. Rem let out a slow breath and unclenched his fists, and Garrett stopped grinding his teeth and picked up a stack of napkins from the table. I sank to the floor in relief and burst into tears, and they rushed to comfort me in embarrassment. It should have stopped here and now, but do you know what it feels like to sit on 2 chairs? In the end, Rem came up with something genius. So masterful that only Rem could have thought of it. He put the girl in front of us and just said, "Hi everyone, this is Jenny. I got bored and I think I'm going to date her as well. How do you like that idea, Penny, Garrett?" Garrett and I were in shock. I felt that something was wrong, that Rem liked this poor girl, not just accidentally. No, he was trying to prove something to someone with her help. But what? We tried to talk to Jenny, but she was kind of shy and scared. Sometimes Rem answered us. He behaved unrecognizably, boorishly. He snarled at me. "Rem, what the hell is wrong with you?" I was looking at this Jenny, how she liked this kind of behavior of her boyfriend. You know, as a child, it seems that all your competitors are just super bitches, so evil, vicious, and she looked like a rabbit most of all. Terrified. I also wondered where Rem got this chick from. Was he flirting with her behind my back? No, anyone but Rem. It's so unlike him that I don't even know how to describe it. Garrett even tried to flirt with her, but it was obvious that he wasn't interested. And Rem was really mad, so I stopped this mess just in time. Well, what do you say? Is there a chance that Rem's idea will help us? So Jenny joined our dates. She was okay, I guess. No, seriously, in all this time, I hadn't really understood what Jenny's character was or what she was into. She was not happy with us. She didn't keep the conversation going. She just looked at Rem in a scared way like, "Pa, can I have an ice cream?" And these guys wouldn't hurt me? Of course, Rem liked it. Who would have thought? A girl who wouldn't even give a voice once again. He became aggressive and rude with her appearance. This was not the Rem I had loved so recently. For example, once he dared to raise his voice at me when I got the address wrong. He had never yelled at me before. Did the presence of a young fool encourage his conceit? Garrett stood up for me at the time, but I was able to stand up for myself. How dared he? What, since we had a different relationship, I could allow to get yelled at? Rem then apologized, but I was beside myself and did not get any pleasure from the walk. I was thinking all night, how the hell did this happen? What went wrong in our lives? We wanted the best. In the end, we were all unhappy in one way or another. Even this Jenny, she probably didn't know what she was signing up for. I didn't see any way out of this situation, and I was very bitter. One day, Jenny came to my house. I wondered how she knew my address, but she said she had got it from Rem. Well, okay. What did she want from me? Jenny began her speech by saying that this could not go on any longer. She saw that Rem was not interested in her, and she was very burdened by the stupid love between the 4 of us. But Rem seemed to be deaf and did not want to hear her. Jenny saw that Garrett and I had a good relationship, and she didn't want to get involved in it as an extra participant. But Rem was forcing her, and this outrage had to end. To be honest, I thought the same as Jenny. I just didn't have the strength to explain it to myself. Yes, our friendship was not going anywhere, and we just needed to stop lying that it worked. Me and Jenny, and especially the boys. But how could I explain it to them? Jenny said I just shouldn't be afraid. I had no idea how not to worry in this situation, but I could try. When we got the guys together, Jenny repeated what she'd said to me, and I added that, to be honest, this experiment had gone too far and everyone was suffering from it in one way or another. We just needed to solve the question once and for all. Who and with whom would meet and stop blowing each other's minds? I expected the worst, but I was pleasantly surprised by Garrett. He leaned back against the pillows and said honestly, "Well, finally." He also said that he was very glad that the situation was resolved because he didn't know how to approach it. After all, he had invented this nonsense. But Rem, to be honest, he went off the rails. Jenny wanted to talk to him in person, but he wouldn't even look at her. He just pushed me away and came at me like the commander statue. He said so many things to me. He said that I just wanted to be with his best friend, that I was looking for a way to blow him off, that he was trying for me, that if we broke up right now... Wait, Jenny said suddenly. So you wanted Penny back? Not to meet me? There was an oppressive silence in the room. I felt sorry for Rem. Damn, I wouldn't want to be in his place right now. Jenny flew out of the house with tears in her eyes. Rem did not follow her, but simply looked at me and asked coldly, "So, who do you choose?" I looked at Garrett's face and smiled. And you know what? I didn't lose my choice. In all the years we'd been dating, I'd never doubted that Garrett and I should be together. We didn't quarrel, we didn't doubt the power of our love. Hey, who would? Jenny and I became friends. She found some funny guy from the comic shop, and now we had a new place to hang out. And Rem, well, I have no idea how his life is going right now. Hopefully for the better. I really want to believe that he will find a girl with whom he can feel good. She might not even look like me. Who knows? Although this experiment has given me true love and a new friend, I would not want to go through all this hell again, to be honest. Compromises don't always bring peace to the home. Sometimes they just delay the inevitable and make losses more serious. I'm not sure I don't want to be friends with Rem. It's a pity that he doesn't think so. Subscribe to our channel, put likes, and send your awesome stories. And let love always win in your relationship.